Hello there, it's the Cyber Dudes podcast. It's episode 4. I'm Robin Thornton, and you are?
I remain Omar Sangrima. How you doing, Robin?
Very good, thank you, very good. How are you?
Hanging in there, living the dream, man.
Marvelous,
Living the
marvelous.
dream.
I realised there where I was like, how are you? It seemed as though I was breaking the fourth wall, talking to the audience. It was a little bit weird.
Yeah.
A little bit strange. All right, well, we have got an interesting little episode today. We are going to be going into the topic du jour, the tickety tock, and all of the musings that's been going on with that, because it's frankly been pissing some people off. And honestly, we might also end up pissing some people off as well with it. We're going to be doing, after we've done the news, we're going to be doing a little bit of a thought experiment on better that TikTok no longer have an app available in the States, or is it really just some tyrannical overreach? Before we get into that, the news. So, first things first, no, the beer, not the beer. Duvel says it has more than enough beer after ransomware attack, which I guess is pretty good news if you like drinking rocket fuel, because that stuff... What's the percentage on that stuff?
Usually, my beloved shoofs are about 8.5.
It's just so much.
They're delightful, bro. Come on. They have a little gnome on them. Come on. They're cute.
I know, but it's... I mean, sometimes fair enough, they do like taste like rocket fuel, but other times they'll like just creep up on you, and it'll be, I'm fine. Oh, I'm shitty.
Been there.
Yeah.
Definitely been there.
So, Duvel Mortgat Brewery has been hit by a ransomware attack on March the 5th. So it's knocked out production at the bottling facilities of the brewer. However, they have said that they do have enough of their strong, fruity, golden pale ale. This isn't an advert, I promise. This is just literally me reading the article. Their strong, fruity, golden pale ale bearing the name of the brewery, Duvel. Bad news, or potentially bad news. If it lasts too long, it's bad news if you're also a fan of Vedette, Meredsu, or La Chouffe, because they are also brewed by the same brewer. It's a familiar thing to hear as regards to ransomware, isn't it?
It is. What I like that this bridges that weird gap between physical preparedness. So I guess, having enough backup stock makes sense. The agilist in me goes, oh, inventory, how dare you? But in this case, I'm very happy that they have more than enough. One piece that I'm weirded out by, I wanted to run by you. What do we think about the ransomers have 88 gigs of data that they're threatening to leak? What could possibly, is it like recipes or whatnot, do you think? Is it intellectual property? What could possibly worry?
Well, you've got PII, you've got personally identifiable information, which is all the staff. There's stuff like there's probably things like building security systems and things like that, industrial control stuff as well. But yeah, frankly, it's brewing beer. It's not the Coca-Cola recipe, for instance. But
how dare you?
There's still there's still trade secrets that go on in that. There's still specifics about how they make it, how they get the taste, whatnot. I think there's also the aspect of there'll be contracts in there and things like that. There'll be details of it's the other piece is the supply chain element of it. Who else now can we
up or downstream?
Business email compromise. We now know who all of your suppliers are downstream and upstream, like you said. We can go off at them as well. But that's I get your point about pay it or we'll release all of your information. Like, okay, we're not involved in some, seedy, cloak and daggers beer conspiracy, or are they? I don't know.
Find out. They're in bed with Ambev, right? Like, watch.
Oh, are they?
No, I'm saying price fixing. I don't know. Like, it's just my
I
mind went
see.
to
I see what
weird,
you
different places. But you're right in terms of the supply chain implications that and also just employee data.
Yeah, and I think the employee. I mean, for me, the employee data is the biggest bit there as well, because that's, well, it's going to be the European equivalent of social security and payment details, whatnot. Oh, well, I mean, we don't know enough to speculate any further. Nice little segue, however, though, since we were talking about crypto, this piece from the Register: crypto scams more costly to the US than ransomware, feds say. Assuming you trust what the feds say, I don't know. I'm fine with them. Latest figures paint grim picture of how viciously the elderly are targeted. This is a tale as old as time, but this is awful. And it's only going to get worse as crypto gets as the crypto hype ramps back up again in the wake of the next halvening, which is like what, in 3-4 weeks time.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't like that. I don't like the feeling about this.
As this gets more ubiquitous, as you say, and you've started to see that this is now not as much of a fringe asset. This is more and more in regular people's portfolios. There's less barriers to entry. They're democratizing it, which normally, this is all stuff as technologists, we go, awesome, great. Definitely want to make, cool tech available to more people. That's a net good. And while it still might be a net good, I'm just thinking, I don't want my mom touching crypto. Like, I don't want her losing her house. Sadly, this is the sorts of things that open the door to absolutely, we touched on pig butchering scams, I think, episode or two ago.
Yeah.
This is it right here.
Funnily enough, I actually stumbled upon that John Oliver episode about pig butchering scams, and the crypto scam is, or at least in that episode, the crypto scam was embedded within the romance scam, or the broader, more generic pig butchering scam. I remember you saying it goes into the northern Myanmar
human
scenario
trafficking
there, and the human trafficking,
stuff, yeah.
People think they genuinely are having a good job, and then it turns out to just be a gang of 20-somethings that have now taken their passport, and very, very lousy. Yeah, investment scams often promising huge returns lead to reported losses of 4.57 billion throughout the year, a 38% increase on the 3.31 billion in 2022. Yeah. This is lousy. So yes, be very, very wary of anything crypto. Do not use anything but the most mainstream of apps, and be incredibly suspicious if anyone's trying to rope you into any of this sort of stuff. And especially, I kind of think we kind of said this last week, but in a different last episode, but in a different context. I am not a financial advisor, but do not get involved in any financial products that you don't understand. Very bad business.
That's really just a good rule of thumb, period, I think. And it's, also the classic, don't call me, I'll call you. Now we can even say, if somebody bamboozles you into calling them, that's still something to take a beat, right? The money's going to be there. If it's a great opportunity, it'll last more than, 7 minutes that it'll take you to maybe do a couple of check C's. It's it's a one-way street, right? This can lead to financial ruin. And of course, nefarious actors are going to target those folks that they think they can get on the hook the quickest, and also will ask the least amount of questions. So vulnerable populations, beware for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And now the final one that we have in the news. It's the big one. It's the real big one. It's the TikTok. So dark reading. TikTok ban raises data security control questions. The context. Wednesday the 13th of March, Congress passes a bill that essentially says TikTok needs to divest from its parent company, ByteDance. Otherwise, Google and Apple would be compelled to remove them from their respective app stores. This isn't law yet. It still has to pass the Senate. It still has to get signed on the desk of the Oval Office. But it's wound a fair few people up. Now, I think the wording of it is somewhat vaguer than everybody is making out, but we kind of all know really what it means.
This, I think, between this and the recent antitrust issue, right, against
Apple thing
against Apple,
yeah.
I mean, you know, Biden's taking big swings at big tech. I think he's finally waking up. Antitrust is finally unzombifying itself, right? It kind of was a C-level player in many an administration over the last 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
Brought us some great toys and some great goodies, but I think to the detriment of the great United States here, your adopted homeland there, Robin. But I just think it's a wait and see, as you said. There's no, Senate is definitely a different animal than Congress. I have heard that Oval Office, as you said, I think Biden signs it if it gets past the Senate. I don't think that's like a wild hurdle there. But I don't know. There's so many different angles to play.
It does. It needs a 2/3 majority, I believe, in the Senate. Which is that is it a true 2/3, or is it just is that a colloquialism for it just needs 60?
I think it's a colloquialism for 60. I believe. Yeah. Don't send hate mail, or do. I don't care. But I think it's really...
If they don't know where to send it, it doesn't matter.
That's fine, right? Like, I have a couple crypto scams that I'll hook you up with. I just think... I think it gets signed if it gets passed there, but that's still a big if.
Oh, Biden said he will pass it if it goes through the Senate.
Yeah, right? So I think that this is... But Senate's a different beast. There's some great ideas, and this is... love them or hate them. I'm not trying to go on either side here. This has been a historically terrible House and Senate for actually getting bills passed into law. I think the numbers like in the low 20 or the mid 20s.
Yeah.
For this entire session, which is pretty abysmal. If we were that terribly unproductive, we'd get fired, Robin. So
I have seen, I can't remember where it was. I have seen like pieces written by people or videos made by people calling out certain congresspersons, saying this individual has been in the House for 20 years, has sponsored has co-sponsored X number, has never actually written one themselves, and of all the ones that they have co-sponsored, it has got to a vote twice and both failed. So it's literally like this person has done nothing for their constituents in their entire time in office. It's wild. Either
side of the aisle, that's terrible, I think, is the political term for that. Some would say savvy, but that's awful. Just work.
It's
do
rubbish.
Something.
It's genuinely rubbish.
It really is.
Yeah, and that's the other thing as well. I've seen a lot of people in the comments going like, why do we still have all these like fossilized dinosaurs in like on Capitol Hill? It actually works particularly as well for the presidential race as well, given that it's an octogenarian and a septuagenarian going at it again. It's like setting up a boxing match in an old folks' home. It's just...
Listen, I'm not above that. I'm not above that. I'll take action, all right? Like, as a former bookie, but...
There's questionable morality to it, but you're not. It's not the sort of thing that you're going to turn your back on and say, "I don't want to watch this."
For sure, right? This is when shout out to R.I.P. I guess I just found out or remembered that homeboy died, right? Screech from Saved by the Bell. Like when they set him up.
Yes.
When they set him up on some celebrity boxing matches, and he was far younger, and you could still there was a level of ick to that, I think that you really have to go, man, this is some backroom weird type of action. Very similar, I think, to what we'd see. And like you said, I'll never get that analogy out of my head now. Thank you very much. The entire election, I'm just going to be expecting them to actually circle around and punch each other. But I don't know.
God.
Oh,
All right, there's going to be some laughter we have to cut out there.
sure.
It does remind me slightly as well. Where is that? Where is that? Whichever one of those bloody Paul brothers fighting Mike Tyson thing is, because that's
Oh.
ripped straight out of The Simpsons. It's like, I'm going to make orphans of his children,
For sure.
because that's true. That's who Drederick Tatum was based on. It was Mike Tyson.
100%. That whole thing I've been seeing. Oh, don't put me down that rabbit hole there. I think
No, okay, we'll stop there then.
Yeah, that's. I
You don't
could
have to
go
answer
for
that
another
question.
40 minutes. But yes, I
We need
felt
to get
that.
into the feature.
We do.
Feature.
We do.
So the feature is our thought experiment. But we're going to have a bit of a lead into this one, because there is some important context that is needed. The TikTok thing, what is it? And the ownership. So TikTok, short form video social media app, very, very addictive. All the kids love it, and by all accounts, many small businesses have also essentially based an entire marketing strategy on it, which I don't think is all so much the wisest thing to do. It's kind of putting all your eggs in one basket. Diversify, maybe. There's lots of the small businesses complaining about the potential of this. But the ownership structure is thus that TikTok is based in Singapore as a subsidiary of a Beijing-based parent company called ByteDance, which also owns a similar app to TikTok, Douyin, I think the pronunciation is, which is exclusively for the Chinese market. Now, the bill that we've just been talking about, we've got 6 months, right?
Mm-hmm.
From the time it passes, 6 months for TikTok to split itself off from ByteDance, and has to be sold to basically find itself a new owner. The wording of the bill is such it doesn't necessarily specify that it has to be an American owner, but fitting in with the requirements of US national security kind of requirements and things like that, basically it means that it just has to get sold to an American firm. I can see why people are cheesed off with this, because it does essentially seem like we like your baby, we're going to take it.
Listen, all Winnie the Pooh jokes aside, it's a big swing by any administration. The present one, of course. Like I said, it's taking a new era, or trying to start a new era with antitrust. I think it's really it's a recognition that these things can and do have national security implications. Yeah. Right.
And this is this is conversation that I've had with a couple of people, and one of the things that ended up getting said was, "Oh, it's got nothing to do with China. TikTok is based in Singapore." I was like, "Yeah, but that doesn't really matter all that much there." But I did some digging, and you go further into the ByteDance ownership. You go to Zhang Yiming, who is the guy who founded ByteDance, basically failed with an initial app. This is really interesting. It goes back to 2018. The ByteDance's first app was shut down by the Chinese National Radio and Television Administration, which is essentially like the FCC for China. And it was shut down, and in response, Zhang issued an apology, writing that the app was, and I quote, incommensurate with socialist core values, and had a weak implementation of Xi Jinping thought, which is kind of like Winnie the Pooh's doctrine. I'm going to end up with Chinese intelligence agents turning up at my house, aren't they?
1,000%.
He hates
you know
being
what?
called Winnie the Pooh.
Listen, do you, man? Do you?
If I'm not here tomorrow. Well, if I'm not here the day after this goes out.
Of course.
You know what happened.
Yeah.
weak implementation of Xi Jinping thought and promised that ByteDance would further deepen cooperation with the ruling Chinese Communist Party to promote its policies. And these guys have ownership of TikTok. I don't like it.
No.
But let's go into... So essentially, TikTok, 6 months from bill becoming law to find itself a new owner. Otherwise, it gets ripped out from the app stores. Funnily enough, I think the wording is sufficiently vague in this that it doesn't... Lots of people are saying, oh, this is very much First Amendment free speech, yada, yada, yada.
Sure.
Even if TikTok is taken out of the app stores, the web version is still accessible, because to block access to that definitely would be a free speech issue, because it would be the US government censoring what US citizens and legal residents and everybody else who's in the country have the right to see. Now, my personal opinion is if you take away the app, it doesn't really matter. The First Amendment enshrines your right to say what you want without persecution from the government. My personal opinion on it is that it does not give you the right to be heard by the millions of people who you share the world with. It doesn't matter. You can shout all you want, but shout into a void. So who they can be sold to? Yes, that's essentially it's going to end up being a US company. It's not being helped by the fact that Steve Mnuchin and his cronies have decided that they want a slice of that pie. That is egregious.
Yeah, it really is a terrible look. Once I saw that, I just cringed.
Yeah.
Just for the mental image, again, of having, Homeboy in my mind's eye again. Like, he's this is me saying this, he's a particularly ugly individual, unfortunate looking, right? But that aside,
very slimy too.
Hey, listen, the rot happens from the inside is all I'm going to say. Look into it, bro. But I think it's just having that be draped over the rest of this story, I think complicates things, and it also allows I think some bully pulpiting from different sides of whatever aisle you happen to be finding yourself in.
I do wonder whether it was a calculated move to just get a load of bad press on it.
Yeah.
Basically, you just get everybody saying, "Oh, here we go. It's just all the former government people and their cronies, right, yeah. And the millionaire class and etc. etc." Anywho, why is this happening? It's essentially, it comes down to concerns about privacy, national security, disinformation. Again, some of the research that I was doing on this was particularly wild. I think I'm gonna pick out a few here that were. I mean, it's essentially it comes down to is the Chinese Communist Party grabbing data, en masse harvesting data of US individuals for nefarious means? And I mean, the things that I've heard, the arguments that I've heard back against that are like, well, Zuckerberg has all of my information anyway.
I want my surveillance to be red, white, and blue. All right. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
There's those aspects of it. Some of the aspects I've heard that I found troubling as well are, what is the algorithm being targeted, right, per different region of the world. There's been some independent academic studies done being like, hey, it's really hard to find anti-Chinese government sentiment on the platform. That's weird, right? And to the point where it can't be accidental. There's also some studies being done, still in the study phase, if I'm not mistaken, on whereas during the the kickoff of the Israel Palestine fracas, right? The armed conflict there was, were certain messages pointed at certain members of certain demographics in the United States just to stir up sentiment. This is all very troubling, where we find ourselves at the precipice of that old person boxing match, as you said, in November. It's very, I think, we had that Cambridge Analytica wild stuff, right, come to light. During a previous campaign, I think, thankfully, we're maybe seeing the punch being thrown a hair earlier now,
Hmm.
and I think something's being done about it. But like that's another troubling thread to
Yeah.
pull in this whole mess.
So we do need to rifle through a couple of bits of this. Fundamentally, so the China in 2017 passed what they call a national intelligence law, which ultimately says that any Chinese company has to cooperate with data collection requests of the Chinese government. It does not mean, or at least this is the way that it's been pitched to everybody else, it does not mean that China has unfettered real-time access to data. They do still have to request it, but they can get what they want if they want, when they want. And the very fact that TikTok is a subsidiary of ByteDance means that data grabby, it's mine attitude flows down through the corporate structure. So the concerns here ultimately are that the app is being used as essentially a mass surveillance tool. And that's actually undoubtedly what we're going to get into in our thought experiment. Few bits before we get onto that. The backlash has very much been, as you've referenced, over censorship and curtailment of free speech. One of the funniest things that I saw of this was Mark D'Amelio, who is the father of the D'Amelio girls, who have made a massive, massive fortune on TikTok. And the headline from CNBC saying, TikTok is one of the biggest platforms for free speech that I've ever seen. Of course you're going to say that, Mark. You make millions off the damn thing.
I've also seen campaigns of just other influencers calling in, doing campaigns. I think that's pretty transparent to see through.
I mean, it's transparent to see through if you're looking at it. If it fits your agenda of I want to keep this because it's good for free speech.
Sure.
It's worth mentioning that many of the same things that Facebook has been, and Google through YouTube and whatnot, many of the moderation decisions that they've taken that have been pitched as censorship, TikTok has also been accused of as well. They just haven't been accused of to necessarily quite the same level, or that kind of furore has obviously not bubbled up on the platform itself, because why would the people pulling the strings at TikTok want bad press about it on the platform itself?
It's very difficult to find certain messaging there. I think we touched on it prior. That's not hard to see why.
Private companies are free to moderate their content the way that suits them. It's their platform. They can do however they want. They can be as heavy-handed or as lax as they feel like. I do get the sense that TikTok is relatively lax about some stuff. It's been gone the other way as well, where it's been criticized for kind of some unsavory things being left up there. But there is also lots of things like COVID misinformation, QAnon. The Pizzagate thing apparently went absolutely rife on there as well.
It can go either way. I think one of the main troubling issues is, like you said, who in the end is pulling the strings. And I think that this is one of those situations where it might be an imperfect solution, but at least, right, this is, you know what, there's also something to be said for, this is the first, I think, to my knowledge, right, the first big swing that's being taken in this sort of fashion. I think maybe, there's not maybe, I think we've seen the Senate hearings where a lot of Senate just don't know what the hell they're doing when it comes to tech, or how, what their role is for regulation. Again, I'm not a big pro regulation dude. You can't paint me with that brush there, but it's one of those trying to feel your way in the dark sort of situations. And this is just a big name that, and also like we said, it's a critical time to be tackling this issue.
Yeah. With the election coming up, because that's another thing actually. In the research that I was looking at, they apparently hate speech has a marked spike in lead up to election times, specifically on TikTok. You said something there as well that reminded me of a point that I've put in the plan here about the first real swing. Yes and no, because Trump did try. I mean, this is the first one that's got any teeth, but Trump did try and get rid of it previous. However, he's now coming out and saying that he doesn't like this. He doesn't want it because then it gives Meta more, potentially more market share. It just feels like a bit of a windsock, just going whichever way suits him. We all know that he's got no problem with just turning on a dime to suit his agenda. But
listen, there might be some real estate deals in Serbia. There might be some real estate deals somewhere else that he might need. He's got bond that he's got to put up soon. I mean, he's trying to get his dollars and cents together, man.
Apparently, he's looking at selling Mar-a-Lago and is struggling.
It's, my heart goes out to him. It really does.
Right, we'll get into the thought experiment piece here. So what we're going to do, we're going to do the role play kind of thing. So I'm gonna take up Xi Jinping. I'm gonna be the evil man here. No, we should. Well, that's kind of passing judgment, really, isn't it? He's been in office for God knows how long, and he's cemented himself very much Putin style at the top of the Chinese hierarchy. So I'm going to take the Xi Jinping role. Omar is going to play the role of a high-level government official who is always going to be there. As Xi Jinping, why am I going to want influence over an app like TikTok? Well, I'm the Chinese premier. So I'm the second largest economy in the world, only to the US, and I've never really been able to usurp my rival there. And the key point there is my rival. So what I want to do, I want to try and give myself a competitive edge any way that I can. Now, what I already do in some of those terms is I extend my reach into places like the South China Sea, building artificial islands and trying to extend my territorial waters for the sakes of grabbing natural resources that might be there. But I don't want to overtly launch all-out conflict with the country in the world who has the largest defense budget, the largest navy, an advanced air force. You're loving this, aren't you? So what do I do to gain a competitive edge? I could mess with his people. And here's where I think the attitude of Mark Zuckerberg already has all of my data and sells it anyway is stopping short of the true potential nefariousness of this. And I'm not saying that this is happening. I'm saying if I were in his position, this is what I would be doing. If I can glean data from half of the population of my largest geopolitical rival, and they will willingly give me that data because they love the app and they basically cannot put it down. What things can I figure out about that population in order to get them riled up, anxious, unproductive, at each other's throats, heavily divided, woke versus left versus right, woke versus I don't know. What can I do to influence that? Well, I can take all of that data, I can figure it out, I can make broad generalizations, I can actually make some specific rules about who sees what. very much in the same way that Cambridge Analytica did with people that they thought were more likely to vote to leave the EU. Only those people saw very contentious images of people lining up at refugees lining up at Eastern European borders with charged messaging. Only people who were flagged up as very into animal rights were fed false information about how the EU thinks about conservation and cooperation with organizations like PETA. This targeting of who sees what, and it doesn't necessarily need to be. And if I don't want to be in a position where my cloak and dagger approach gets accused of overt censorship, I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to flood the whole thing with so much of the stuff that I want you to see that unless you explicitly go looking for it, you're never going to see the stuff that I don't want you to see. That's how I'm doing it. I don't attack my enemy physically. And again, straight out of the kind of communist playbooks and the totalitarian playbooks, play the slow, long game. Was it the slow knife cuts the deepest or something? Mm-hmm. Play the really slow game. Get everybody at each other's throats and get them to tear each other apart from the inside. Because it's very popular with the teenagers. You can influence the way that a country acts for decades into the future. Might it just be a fun app where it's just 60-second videos and everybody's having a good time? Yeah, possibly. But if it's working under the direction of an authoritarian head of state that has no interest in the well-being of Americans and Westerners, very much more interest in his own population, for whom he gives an entirely different app with a very, reportedly a very different, with reportedly a very different tone of content. Apparently Douyin is much more educational in its tone. That's how I'm doing that.
For all those reasons and more, I think the first primary goal in my position as a lifer in the American intelligence community, have to keep it out of your hands. I think it just, and listen, doesn't necessarily have to go into completely, American controlled, an American controlled organization. We've been having trouble having Google and Verizon and Apple hooking us up with those please thank you warrants that they've been just so nice to fill for us over the years. Now
expand on that.
Well, now it's coming to light that those major telecom companies tend to acquiesce to police level and above requests. So it'd be really nice to have a cool young player in the game, a fresh concern whose life goal would, of course, one of them would be taking over those fuddy-duddies that don't play nice with the U.S. intelligence community anymore. Come on in, you play nice with us, we'll clear the way for, from aside from the antitrust knives, as you said, those big, long, slow things there. As long as it's not in, an overt rival's hands, and can be, I think, brought to heel over time, the same sort of long game. That's the cool part, I think, with where we're coming from. It's not necessarily, we're not presidentially powerful, but we can have the same sort of see the whole board long view that certain rivals in other governments can have. So to counter that, really, right? It's we want that sort of insight it's pretty similar in terms of the sort of data that we want to garner. It'd be awesome to be able to see what folks' interests are, what they tend to want to do. That's just going to be something that I think, in terms of promoting the safety of the overall union, I think we could all agree on. No, it's much safer to have that sort of information, to have those sorts of insights over those sorts of demographics, as you said, within good old American hands. It's, we're all the rising tide raises all ships here. It's good old United States interests. If you're gonna have all that surveillance happen, it might as well be domestically run and within our purview there. Between that and just keeping it out of the hands of a foreign power that would love nothing more than to use it for potentially nefarious purposes. I'm not saying that, hey, let's let this, be taken over by, a Russian consortium or, potentially some South American countries that have, may or may not have legitimate bones to pick with my homeland here. But I think you just have to take a look at, regardless of what side of the aisle comes into power at what point in time, this is data that you're gonna want in American hands, right? As unfettered as you can get it, and without the fuss and muss of having it be, a literal act of Congress to be able to open up a phone if we need to stop domestic terrorism.
Yep. So let me ask you the question. So, as in your role as a high-level government official in a democracy, right? People will disagree with us on some of those bits, but we go to vote every 4 years. It's a democracy. Are you not most interested in, from a national perspective, are you not most interested in stability?
We're interested in stability with the appearance of choice. So long as there's upper and lower bounds of, like you said, not outright censorship, and there's reasons why, as we said at the top of the call here, or the top of the show, there's reasons why this bill is even worded the way it is. I think, as you stated, there's certain entities doing themselves the services by jumping on the bandwagon a little too early.
Yeah.
But I think stability-wise, of course, we want to have ultimate, if we need it, ability to take a peek at what folks were doing and when, what folks are interested in and why, and having a bit of a slight guiding hand, right? But of course, not overtly censoring or having a straight up nefarious agenda as a foreign rival would, even if they have a shell company in Singapore doing its cat's pawing for it.
Yeah. I look at this from the perspective of US, the original capitalists, effectively. Largest economy in human history. It all requires people to keep doing what they're doing, be productive, keep spending, begets more spending, etc., etc., etc. You wanting to keep your place at the top of the pyramid, being the top dog economically, what do you really want from people then? Surely, do you want? Are you out to suppress them, or do you just want them to spend?
Want them to spend, but we want them to spend with a positive attitude towards America in their hearts. It could go one way or the other, maybe for a season or two. You could get a little bit mad at your local your local school board here and there, but at the end of the day, it's not something where we want an outside party being able to truly guide this country towards the types of divisions that leave its place at the top of that heap, as you said, under scrutiny and potentially under attack. Why wouldn't you want to be able to have insight into potentially the next 9/11? Why would you say no? If we can track folks, there's been apps that have given data in weird roundabout ways. The one I'm thinking about is that jogging app for armed service members abroad.
Oh, Strava.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So the insights, there's a whole realm of information security. You could say threat intelligence or even OSINT, and they're very interlocked. The insights you can draw from the type of activity, from timestamps, from the types of activities, and also what changes them. Right? There's a whole other thought experiment we could go on in terms of, okay, what suddenly changed the zeitgeist here? What happened? There's it very well potentially could delve into the realm of just a long play psyop if you wanted to get really really toasty with it. And again,
Well, that's one of the words that I've actually neglected to mention up till now. It's the psyop piece. It's long term, might sound dramatic, but psychological manipulation, and it is very much. I mean, okay, it's also slightly MK Ultra, but it's very much out of the communists' playbook, and that kind of fuckery. I don't think that you want to run the risk of being on the receiving end of it. I'm not saying that the US, the UK, France, NATO, whoever the hell the rest of it. I'm not saying that any of them are perfect, but it's a batshit prospect to say that we're going to do all of that stuff to ourselves. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't work in your own best interests as a society.
I think the cat's out of the bag though, Robin. I think it's the blueprint's already there. I don't think you can unring a bell, especially not in this format. Say we wave a magic wand and we get rid of TikTok forever somehow, and we skirt the issue of the first, the free speech there, like you said. What's going to stop a Google or an Apple or an Amazon or just any other tech company from taking pages out of its books and amending its own offerings? What's going to stop an intrepid entrepreneur, the things that this country are built on, from going down that role anyway? So wouldn't you rather have it slightly contained than having to play whack-a-mole with this type of idea every 5 or 10 years?
There's much more peace of mind to be had having agency over a dangerous thing yourself than somebody else whose intentions that you don't know having control of it.
I just think that agency is already...
It's better the devil you know.
But I think that agency's far gone. I don't think we can roll that agency back. The second we started playing around with smartphones to the degree that we do, I think we're on a conveyor belt towards that anyway. The thing that would let me sleep at night is at least having, Americans at the controls of the conveyor belt.
That's what I mean. It's least worst option.
Of course. Oh, for sure. I mean, I'm not going to get off the grid.
No.
Of course.
Final thing before we move on. You mentioned about Strava and the tracking soldiers and getting footprints of military bases. And I said, we're not perfect. We do the same sort of thing to our own adversaries. I've read a piece on Wired, have it here. In 2019, a government contractor in DC was doing the rounds, had a conversation with some people in the Pentagon, had figured out how to used Grindr, the gay dating app, as a test bed for figuring out how you can leverage specific apps on people's phones in order to figure out associations between each other, thereby working out where people work, who they are, what their potentially level of clearance are based on where they spend their days around government complexes, etc., and used it to track the whereabouts of Putin and his cronies. So it doesn't matter that it's being done on 170 million people who have got the app on their phone. If anyone's in any doubts as to the level of potential nefariousness in this, particularly given that the Chinese government can get the data and there is evidence of entities within China having had direct real-time access into servers on US soil. It's entirely possible and we do it to others. Why would we let anyone do it to us?
Of course.
Anyway, right, moving on, because we have 12 minutes. Certification Corner, your favorite part of the show. What do you have for us today?
One of my favorite parts of life, honestly, if we're keeping it a buck here. But continuing...
Collects certs like Pokemon.
Pokemon, right there, right? Gotta catch them all. Continuing along our dive into CompTIA, right? CompTIA. I promised that we take a look. Next on the docket from the Security Plus that we looked at on our last show, it's the Cybersecurity Analyst CISA Plus.
Not CISA.
No,
CISA.
No, that's a whole different thing.
Oh,
in tech and cyber. So,
CISA, an agency. This is a cert. CYSA,
and great agency at that. They're trying. All right, that's what I'll say. They're trying. So, CompTIA has essentially, it's been likened to, and accurately so, this is going to be your next level blue team cert. It's whether you're trying to graduate up from entry-level SOC analyst to SOC lead, or or senior SOC analyst. You like playing around in the realms of threat intel, anything and everything blue team. And I think it's being done purposely because on a further show, we'll dive into what the Pentest Plus is, the equivalent on that same tier as the CISA Plus. This is still, I have to say, somewhat affordable. The voucher alone, it will about 400 bones, about $400. Of course, there's a whole training apparatus around it. I was really blown away while I was doing research here. You can pay as you go with Affirm now. I'm old enough to know that was not a thing when I signed up. Yeah, this is like a buy now, pay later sort of thing. Cool. That's something we could do an entire show on, I think, in terms of talk about nefarious entities. But John Oliver's beat the hell out of that. Shout out to another one of my favorite Brits there. This is one of those that, again, I wouldn't quite self-fund, but it's not CEH levels of, oh my goodness, there's 4 digits in this price tag, or OSCP levels of self-funding where that's just, it can range from anything from $1,000 to $5,000. So, yeah, OSCP, we can go into that, and we will down the road, I think, if we do a little bit of a red team run there. It can be up to 85 questions. Nothing too nutty. I believe they give you the 3 hours, 165 minutes. So a little bit shy of the 3-hour mark. They do the sliding scale. The same with all of these. They don't want to tell you, hey, you need a 65 or whatever to pass. It's on a scale of 100, 900, the math they do on purpose. They recommend, and this is where it starts to get funny, because they recommend about 4 years of hands-on experience. I don't know if they do it purposely. I will say they do. They want this to be a run-up to a CISP, as we mentioned on previous shows. But it's essentially your blue team extraordinaire. There are some competition. There are some competitors out there that are a bit more hands-on now. We can go into those on subsequent shows. But in terms of brand recognition, you really can't beat CompTIA with a stick. If you see this, it's really, what I've seen this more on for job specs is in the nice to have category. Sec Plus is still going to be like your entry, your ticket to the dance. CISA is going to be, you're showing folks that you're serious It might be something that maybe you substitute for, I have 5 years of X experience. No, I have 2.5 or 3, plus I took this exam. It verifies that I know what I'm talking about from
Yeah.
a blue team perspective. So yeah, CISA, I loved it, and it's a good run up to eventually what we'll talk about in a subsequent show, the CASP.
Lovely, lovely. Some terminology there. Unpack the blue team thing for us.
Sure. So it's more on the defensive side. You're either working in a security operations center, or you're working on the in-house team at an organization, and you're looking at alerts. You're making sure nobody's trying to break in. You're keeping the windows locked, the doors shimmied shut, and you're essentially tending or watching the ramparts. You're holding the gate shut for.
I thought you were going to
potential.
say tending goal.
No, I mean a little bit, honestly, right? Except it's sadly it's the stakes are a hair higher. In
Yes,
certain,
and there's more of you.
Of course,
Hopefully
theoretically,
there's more of
we both know that could be hit or miss there, Robin. But it's
No.
yeah. So blue team, that's blue team defensive side of things.
Nobody wants to be the lone security guy at a place. You'll never get any sleep.
That's a meme in and of itself.
Yes, yes. How a CISO sleeps. Okay, so we're talking at CISA. We're talking it's a blue team, blue teaming defensive certification. It's for those who have been around the block once or twice, 3-4 years worth of experience.
Yes,
so
sir.
don't go diving straight into it. Did we go specifically into what kinds of things it covers there?
It's going to want you to be able to parse through logs. It's also going to want you to be able to reconstruct events from a series of logs. So not only I call parsing and then also reconstruction 2 different avenues that it's going to start walking you down. You're going to recognize things, but then also be able to arrange a series of events. Very light touch. I want to stress forensics.
I was going to say, sounds a little bit forensic-y.
There's and
kind of piece it together, and
of course,
yeah.
But that's as we all know, that's a whole career getting really nasty at forensics, and we both know folks at our current gig that are that way. That's what they do. That's the zen of everything they're about, and they're necessary, but they're also decade or more into this game. So this is absolutely, this will be a teaser, an aperitif. Maybe it'll tell you, hey, I like this forensic stuff.
Yes.
Then you can determine to deep dive in a subsequent role, or just do some more studying that way. It's and that what I also like about this exam, it's there's a few of those practical questions. So it's not necessarily just your multiple choice. You're going to have to click through things. You're going to have to arrange things. You're going to have to move some widgets to be able to show that you know your way around an interface. So there is that component of it that's a differentiator, as well as I think a better entry into hands-on technique polishing.
So if you're clueless, you can't just go sort of throwing darts at a dartboard in the
No,
exam.
and I think listen, and that's come up on the Reddits that I studied to prep for this section. The scoring is done such that you can't really carry the rest of the exam with just going, oh, it's a practical question, whatever, and then kill the multiple choice. They really do weight things disproportionately.
I remember that.
Yes.
I remember that from university. They said, I can't remember quite how they did it, but I think the nub of it was essentially, we've designed it so if you blind guess, you'll get 0.
Period.
Or like if you blind guess, you'll get less than, what was it? If it's multiple choice out of 4, your expectation is that you score 25%, because through dumb luck you'll get 1 out of 4 correct. And they went, no, we've gamed it so that you score pretty much near to 0.
Yeah, those are serious examinations, and that's been down. CompTIA is going down that road. It wants to differentiate itself as a lot more of a hands-on, without going full hands-on like some of the certs that we'll get into down the road.
Marvelous. And then, so any particular prereqs aside from the experience and sort of having worked in a security ops center, any particular experience for the CISA? Oh, not experience, sorry.
Prerequisites.
Do that one again.
Sure.
Any particular prerequisites for the CISA?
There's nothing locked in stone. Reading the recommended experience, of course, CompTIA is going to be a little bit incestuous and say the Network Plus, the Sec Plus, as well as some experience. Not knocking that. We did this after the Sec Plus for a reason. But if that's looking to be a little bit pricey and you just go, hey, Omar, hey, Robin, hey, Cyber Dudes, I want to be a blue teamer. There's also a bunch of rooms on TryHackMe that will get you really up to snuff. I think that could be a very cost-effective way to get yourself ready for this, but I can't stress enough, do that as well as doing the job. These exams are much more now geared towards showing and proving and validating real experience versus allowing you to leapfrog the experience and say, get me a job, I'll break in. That's no longer the case at this point.
Yeah. Having the practical experience gives you a bit more of that Zach Galifianakis from The Hangover, cogs and numbers, etc. Yep. So, final thing, what's the next sensible step after you've got your CISA?
After this, I would say you determine whether you want to double down on Blue Team, and then there's paid portions of the TryHackMe, as I mentioned. There's also I think there's a new player on the block, Blue Team Labs. There's a whole thing you can go out and pay for there. But if you want to continue on the Pokemon Quest, CASP is definitely next up. If you want to just straight up continue down that path, I went CISA, Pentest Plus, then CASP, but you know your mileage may vary.
Cool. Good stuff. Right, we are out of time. We'll be back with something much more mellow in a couple of weeks' time. But it's been wonderful having you with us, and that's that. I'll bid you all adieu. Thank you, Omar.
Stay classy.